For as long as humans have been around, we've had wars. These are conflicts that don't just redraw maps or change who's in charge. They fundamentally change the people who fight them. They change bodies, minds, and even entire generations. So let's take a look at the real human cost of it all.
And that right there, that's the big question we're going to tackle. Because for a soldier, the war doesn't just stop when the last shot is fired or they put down their weapon. So often, a new war, a much quieter and more invisible one, is just getting started.
But here's the thing. This internal war, it doesn't wait for the battlefield. It actually begins long before the first bullet flies, right inside the soldier's own body, a biological battleground that's being prepped for a conflict it can't even comprehend yet.
So, it all happens in these 3 stages. First up, the call. Just hearing the news of deployment is enough to trigger a full-blown anxiety response. We're talking cold sweats, a heart that's pounding out of your chest. The nervous system is immediately on high alert. Then you've got the training. Now, this is way more than just learning how to shoot. It's about systematically breaking down a person's individuality through just relentless stress and sleep deprivation, all to rebuild them into a component of a much larger machine. And finally, you have the battlefield itself. This is where the body goes into pure survival mode, just flooded day in and day out with adrenaline and cortisol. The heart races even during sleep. Every single sound becomes a potential threat.
So this constant, just unrelenting stress, that is the real battle. And science reveals a pretty crucial truth here. Not every body is built to handle it the same way. When you're in the trenches, it's often your own biology that starts to decide who can withstand that immense pressure and who might just break under the load.
Okay, so let's say a soldier makes it through the physical war. What's next? Well, that's when the mental one really begins. An internal conflict fought with the scars and the memories that get left behind on the mind.
It's wild how much our understanding of this has changed over time. Back in World War I, soldiers who were trembling uncontrollably or just went silent were diagnosed with shell shock. And can you believe it? It was often just dismissed as cowardice. Fast forward to World War II, and they started calling it combat fatigue. But the goal wasn't really to heal anyone. It was just to stabilize soldiers enough to send them right back to the front lines. It actually wasn't until after the Vietnam War that the true scale of this crisis became impossible to ignore, and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, was finally recognized as a real medical diagnosis.
So let's get into the science of what's actually happening in the brain with PTSD. During an extremely traumatic event, the brain's fear center, called the amygdala, records that memory with such incredible intensity that it basically gets stuck in the on position. At the same time, the hippocampus, which is supposed to file our memories away neatly, just gets completely overloaded. In the result, the mind relives the war over and over again, through flashbacks, through nightmares, as if it never actually ended.
So, the big question is, can you cure PTSD? Well, the science says it's complicated. The brain can definitely learn to manage the trauma. Therapy and medication can help reduce the symptoms, for sure, but it's not a total cure. That memory, it doesn't just disappear. Just like the quote says, it's like a scar. It's always there, even on the days it doesn't hurt.
All right, for centuries, when you picture a warrior, you probably picture a man, right? But why is that? Let's dig into the mix of biology, culture, and power that has shaped who goes to war.
Historically, the logic kind of made sense. I mean, in an age of swords and shields, the average man's greater physical strength gave him a clear advantage. And of course, patriarchal societies ran with that, casting men in the role of protectors. But modern warfare? It's a completely different ballgame. Technology has changed all the rules. When battles are fought with rifles, tanks, and drones, that physical strength gap becomes almost irrelevant.
And here's what's so important to remember. Women have always been part of the conflict. From Joan of Arc to the incredible Soviet female pilots of World War II, they were just conveniently erased from a lot of the official histories. Today, women are serving in combat roles all over the world. And actually, there are some fascinating studies suggesting that in these modern contexts, women may even tolerate the prolonged stress and isolation of military life better than men. In the end, the battlefield, it really doesn't care about your gender. It breaks whoever steps onto it.
You see, the impact of war is like a shockwave. It doesn't just hit the soldier and then stop. It echoes through families, across whole societies, and even down through generations, leaving these wounds that can last for decades.
Just think about the veterans from the more recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan.
A decade of war left thousands of them struggling with these invisible burdens, things like depression, anxiety, and addiction. It seems that while the technology of war keeps evolving, the psychological scars stay frighteningly the same.
And this next number, honestly, it's just devastating. It really shows you the true cost of that internal war. Approximately 20 U.S. veterans die by suicide every single day. There have even been periods where the number of veterans taking their own lives was higher than the number of soldiers killed in active combat. It's just a brutal reminder that for so many, the most dangerous battlefield is the one they face when they come home.
And this trauma, it doesn't just hit soldiers, not even close. Think about places like Ukraine, Israel, and Palestine. Entire societies are affected. When millions of civilians have to endure bombings, displacement, and constant loss, it creates this phenomenon called collective trauma. You have whole generations growing up to the sounds of sirens, which leads to higher rates of anxiety and depression across the entire population.
And this is where the science gets, well, it's kind of mind-bending. The field of epigenetics is now suggesting that the trauma of war might actually be inherited. The theory is that severe stress can leave these little biological marks on our DNA, which alters how certain genes are expressed. And these marks, they can then be passed down. It means the scars of war could literally be encoded into the biology of the next generation.
So we've walked through this whole invisible battlefield, right? We've seen how war wages this battle inside the body, how it scars the mind, and how those scars can echo for generations. The cost is just, it's immense, and it's layered.
And that leads us to this huge, glaring paradox, doesn't it? War is always waged with the promise of achieving security, or freedom, or peace. But is it ever truly delivered on that promise? Or does it just create these endless cycles of destruction, all in the name of building some better future?
In the end, science is incredible. It can explain how war breaks us. It can detail the biological cascade, it can map the traumatized brain, and trace the scars across generations. But here's the one thing science just can't seem to explain: why we keep doing it. And that leaves all of us with a really profound and honestly unsettling question. Is war an inevitable, inescapable part of what it means to be human? Is peace just the brief moment we take to catch our breath between conflicts?